peace be upon you, is everything taught to our children in schools and universities factual? Or are politicized agendas misleading them with myths that contradict facts proven 130 years ago? Let me tell you a shocking story that summarizes much of what goes on in Western science. The story of the whale's pelvic bones. So stay tuned. If you were to ask the evolution myth zealots, what is the clearest example of evolution? They would say, the evolution of whales. If asked to provide evidence for this evolution, they say, the posterior bones in whales. Whales have two useless bones which are clearly remnants of hips and legs of a terrestrial that walked on land 52 million years ago. Then it underwent random mutations and natural selection until it evolved into the whale we now know. These two bones remain as proof of coincidence and unintentionality because, if a creator had created these organisms, why would he give whales useless bones? Perhaps the first to call these bones useless is the textbook, Biology by Curtis and Barnes in 1989. It referred to these bones as useless vestiges. Most other biology textbooks in Western universities, also used in Arab universities, soon followed suit, such as Glencoe Biology, Modern Biology, Biology by Raven and Johnson, and many, many more. In fact, almost all biology textbooks studied by students of medicine, pharmacy, nursing, biology, as well as high school students in international programs, IG, SAT, etc., contain diagrams and statements asserting the uselessness of these bones under the title, Evidence for Evolution. Almost every myth zealot presents these bones, proudly, as evidence for evolution. Here's Jerry Coyne.
We have many vestigial organs that can only be explained by evolution. Here's one of them. If you look at whale skeletons in natural history museums hanging from the top, you'll often see these two limb bones suspended. Why are they there? They don't seem to have any function at all.
And Richard Dawkins.
But amazingly, if you look inside, deep inside a whale, you'll find vestiges. Vestiges of hind limbs, little tiny remnants of bones, which show that the ancestors had real hind limbs that they actually used for walking.
So, what happened next? In 2014, an evolution journal, even named after the myth Evolution, published a paper titled Sexual Selection Targets Cetacean Pelvic Bones in Dolphins and Whales. After this publication, news sites were suddenly flooded with headlines such as, Whale reproduction, it's all in the hips. Really? So they are useful? Not only useful, but essential for reproduction. And without them, whales would not exist. USC News even said, new study turns a long-accepted evolutionary assumption on its head, finding that whale pelvic bones play a key role in mating. Here is the Smithsonian website, an extreme advocate for the myth, publishing under the title, Whales Make Good Use of Their Pelvises. Great. Did these sites then admit that the myth of evolution has been undermined after the collapse of the evidence they constantly relied on? Of course not. Instead, they shoved evolution-related terms such as evolutionary and evolved into the introductions of their articles and attributed to evolution the benefit of these bones and their function, as if they are saying, the truth must be buried for the myth to live on, to which we reply, persist in your cover-ups and forever live in the dark. Nonetheless, we would like to say to all sites that announce this news, wakey, wakey. This paper in Evolution, which caused all this hype, was not trying to prove that the whale's pelvic bones were necessary for mating. Rather, this fact has been established and well known for ages, as mentioned in the introduction of this paper. Myth disciples, don't you read? As for me, I took the time to read the relevant parts of the paper. In its introduction, I found this paragraph, which states that the belief by many that whales' pelvic bones are useless vestiges is incorrect because they are necessary for mating. The article then explains the bones' well-known role in mating with references to 11 other papers detailing their importance. It also illustrated the relationship between the bones and the whale's genitals. Thus, the function of these bones in the mating of whales was already known and was not the subject of this paper published in 2014. Instead, the paper examined the differences in bone shape between the various species of dolphins and whales, demonstrating that their sizes and shapes match the internal organs of the whale or dolphin, which helps in mating. So, Once again, the evidence the myth zealots manipulate to mislead their followers transforms by true science into additional evidence for any sane person, for the mastery, precision, and preordination of everything in creation. But wait, let us go back to the earlier research cited in this paper, such as the papers that detail the role of these bones in mating. Strangely, dear viewers, the first scientific paper to mention the importance of these bones in mating is the Struthers paper published in 1881, 1 year before Darwin died. So the importance of these bones in mating has been known since Darwin's time. Not since the 2014 research as the scientific websites presumed, but since my great-great-grandfather's time, Allah's mercy be upon them. Struthers was a disciple of the myth. In his paper, I found that he studied these bones in detail, sketched them, and described fully their relationship to genital organs in whales. Struthers said that these bones were rudiments of legs from the evolutionary ancestors of whales, and that their function in whales changed and became restricted to mating. For now, let's ignore this absurd obstinacy to prove the myth. What matters is that Struthers, more than 130 years ago, explained the role of these bones in detail. Many researchers after him confirmed this role in their publications. In 1885, 1907, 1918, 1922, 1932, 1966, 1998, 2004, 2007, and 2009. All these papers consider the role of the bones in mating as a given fact, then move on to delve into their main topic. But wait! Isn't this funny? Assuming that bones, which used to be for walking, are now for mating. How did Struthers conclude that the thigh bone, the femur, evolved into bones related to whale genital organs to help with mating? How could he claim that without evidence? As it's a mess, whichever way you look at it, why not erase the fact that pelvic bones help in mating and keep the hypothesis that whales evolved from terrestrials? This magic trick was actually done in the book Biology by Curtis and Barnes, where instead of the sentence, "The bones are evolutionary vestiges essential for the mating of whales," we find, "The whale retains pelvic and leg bones as useless vestiges." After Biology by Curtis and Barnes, a large number of accredited books followed suit, as we have shown. Accredited textbooks taught by professors at universities? Textbooks that are proofread, reviewed, and updated almost every year? Yes. How is that possible? In the conclusion of the evolution paper that caused the hype in 2014, the researchers, who are also disciples of the myth, reiterate the role of these bones in the mating of whales, and describe those who call them useless as non-cetacean biologists. Non-cetacean. Then, where are the cetacean biologists to call out this terrible mistake that has tainted biology textbooks with a myth contradicting facts known for the past 130 years? So, to the scientific websites that published, "We have finally discovered the role of the bones in the whale's hind," we say, "Wakey, wakey." This fact has been well known for 130 years. But many myth disciples do not bother to read. Therefore, we have a piece of advice for the myth disciples.
In science, you cannot use a 100-year-old book to say, "I criticize evolution." No. Science relies on constant updates. If you rely completely on a book written, even 5 or 4 years ago, you might lead yourself into a scientific scandal. If you want to speak about science, you stay constantly up to date. Science knows no rest. One cannot sleep, then wake up to carry on with science.
Exactly. Well done. Thank you. Let's see how you keep up with science.
You may wonder where the hind limbs are in this huge, smooth body that swims in water. True. There aren't any hind limbs, but if you inspect the anatomy of the whale, you will be amazed. You will find a group of small bones, much smaller than the bones found in the fin. But when these bones were studied and examined, it became crystal clear that they were of 2 hind limbs, vestigial bones, utterly useless, as universally accepted by biologists. The bones are inside the whale's body. Clear? They have clearly not adapted in any way or form to the smooth, elongated body of this swimming animal. Utterly useless, unnecessary. Why are they there then? Why are they deeply situated at the rear? Because they are vestigial remnants, undoubtedly. These bones used to form two hind legs, which were, once upon a time, useful and necessary for a tetrapod, an animal walking on four limbs. Certainly it did not walk in water, it definitely walked on land. Strange and fascinating evidence. Yes, strange and fascinating evidence indeed. Utterly useless, as universally accepted by biologists. Utterly useless, as universally accepted by biologists.
To some we say, wakey, wakey, while others still need to wake up. Let us see what our children are taught in these videos, translated to Arabic and published in 2016, supposedly to enlighten the mind and spread science.
Modern whales do not have leg, but they have a pair of strange bones where the hips and legs are supposed to be. Here is a picture of these bones. Is the similarity just a coincidence? Or are these bones of actual legs? Perhaps vestiges of the whale's evolutionary history?
In fact, let us look at the most popular accredited international textbooks which our kids study in universities and schools, especially in the IG and SAT programs. Certainly, after this scandal, they must have, humbly, amended their error, right? Well, let's see. This is Holt Biology 2011 edition, taught to our children in the SAT program. It continues to mislead them about the whale's pelvic bones. So sit with your son and daughter, dear viewer, and let them watch this episode so that they learn how they've been deceived. What about the well-known international textbook, Biology by Raven and Johnson, in its new 2017 edition? No way. They must have amended the error by then, right? No, not yet. Go to page 434. It still repeats the same lie and tells students that these bones have no apparent function, and that it is difficult to understand vestigial structures such as these as anything other than evolutionary relics. This scandal is similar to the scandal of Haeckel's embryo drawings, which we discussed in the episode For the Sake of the Myth. Although its fabrication was exposed more than a century ago, in 1909, it continues to circulate in accredited textbooks and sites that promote the evolution myth to this day, alongside the myth of useless pelvic bones in whales and many other myths. The same textbooks still claim that the appendix has no function, as in Biology by Raven and Johnson, 2017 edition, page 992. Even though we showed in the episode, Caught You, that the myth disciples themselves exposed this, many years ago, as another lie. Some of these textbooks have titles like Modern Biology. Modern, when they haven't updated their information for over 130 years. As if to say, so what? We believe in evolution, and evolution takes millions of years. Therefore, after millions of years, you may find these vestigial errors removed from our books. But I have good news. In 2018, just a short while ago, the 5th edition of the textbook Essentials of Biology was released by the globally renowned McGraw-Hill Publishing Company. To be fair, they did not repeat the same lie. Enough. It stinks. What did they do then? Did the authors admit that the bones are essential for the survival of whales and apologize for the errors in previous editions? Of course not. Of course not. Instead, they did not mention these posterior bones at all, as if they never existed. Because frankly, it's a scandal. Something you used for decades as evidence for your case turns suddenly into evidence against you. So, no need to bring it up. Don't mention it at all. But what about the evolution of whales, their strongest alleged evidence? Especially since each of their so-called evolutionary milestones has its own comical story, as we will show, Allah willing. That's why they transferred the vestigial bones lie to another creature on their alleged evolutionary ladder, the Rhodhocetus, as they call it. Sorry, who? Rhodhocetus. Pleased to meet you. Can we see Mr. Rhodhocetus and examine his bones as well? No, unfortunately he's dead. Dead? When? 30 million years ago. Refute our claims if you can. Prove its bones were useful. We challenge you. The 2018 edition repeats a different lie about pelvic protrusions near a snake's cloaca. It claims they are useless vestigial hind limbs from a four-limbed evolutionary ancestor. This same lie is propagated by other accredited textbooks. Even though, at least 40 years ago and in various publications, the protrusions were found to be claws or spurs that help snakes during mating and in combat between the males. They are not useless legs as those who demean people's minds claim. Maybe we should wait another 130 years for these books to sweep this lie under the rug. By then, they would have made up new lies to prop the myth so that it does not collapse. This is how the myth disciples look for any protrusion in any organism to label as a useless evolutionary vestige. Believers in the myth of evolution, if you respect science and get defensive about scientific facts, please know that I respect true science and feel defensive about it, more than you do. I excelled in biology and got my academic degree with distinction, thanks to Allah. I do not only learn science from the West, but also contribute with publications, patents, modifying empirical research equations, and reviewing accredited textbooks. Yes, I love the true science in the aforementioned books, but not their pseudoscience pages dedicated to the propagation of the myth. Science teaches me that such pages are only good for wrapping sandwiches. But make sure the paper doesn't contain any health pollutants, alongside its mind pollutants. There's a lot to say, dear viewers, but I don't want to hold you up any longer. So let me refer you to some resources. The giraffe. Do you remember, dear viewers? Its exquisite internal systems, the specialized system that pumps blood to its brain and prevents it from pooling in its legs? That even NASA drew inspiration from it and modeled it in their designs? The myth disciples ignore all this. It doesn't concern them. Instead, they say about the giraffe's recurrent laryngeal nerve.
Strangely, he did not realize the implications, or wonder why this nerve loops such a long way, which seems stupid and foolish. Completely unnecessary. Why does it do so?
Unnecessary. So they say. I refer you, dear viewers, to this article on the website muslimsres.com, so you can see how the evidence for greatness and mastery in design is presented by the myth disciples as evidence for chance and randomness. There's a lot to say. Today we talked about one element of the alleged evolution of whales, a key contributor to neo-Darwinism. Stephen Jay Gould, after explaining the alleged evolution of whales and the so-called evidence of useless pelvic bones, proudly announced, "This discovery stands as a triumph in the history of paleontology. I cannot imagine a better tale for popular presentation of science or a more satisfying and intellectually based political victory over lingering creationist opposition." There's a lot to say, but this should suffice for those truly seeking guidance. What we presented should alert those who have been stung by the pseudoscience missionaries and their Arab patrons. A believer should not be stung twice from the same hole. This begs the question, by Allah, had religious Muslim authors been behind this big scientific scandal, how would they have been viewed by the Muslim youth who are dazzled by the West and allow the West to do the thinking for them? Wouldn't such a scandal cause the closure of its publisher, or at least a lawsuit for providing misleading information to students and professors? The story of the whale's pelvic bones has taught us a lot, dear viewers. We now have a deeper conviction that what the myth zealots use as a doubt against creation can, with true science, become new evidence for Allah's words, translated as the making of Allah who has perfected everything. We've learned that we must warn our children in universities and schools to prevent them from becoming new victims of outdated misinformation and politicized pseudoscience. The story of the whale's pelvic bones taught us to smile with irony when those who let others think for them say, "You are obsessed with your global conspiracy theories against religion. All textbooks teach evolution. All universities teach evolution. This is science, man. Science." This begs the question, when we see, in these textbooks that get thoroughly reviewed, such myths lingering for decades or for more than a century, should we view them as mere errors? Or as a result of the politicization of science? Or is science used to mislead people? I won't answer now, I'll leave it to you. But we will make an important stop later in the appropriate sequence in the series to present some shocking, well-documented facts, some of which I witnessed personally, that will help answer these questions, Allah willing. But it is very important to conclude with what we started. If, dear viewer, you didn't watch any of the 3 episodes, Caught You, The Cocktail, or Wakey, You shouldn't feel obligated to find answers to all the previous questions. You should simply, while leaning back and sipping your espresso, tell the myth disciple, the burden of proof falls on you to prove that your randomness and blind selection can bring about the same organisms whose parts you want me to explain, their function. Our answer is reasonable and logical. Everything that was mentioned in these 3 episodes is merely a side note to tell the myth zealots, go read and learn before you speak, you ignorant people. O Allah, teach us what is of benefit, benefit us with it, guide us, and use us to guide others. Peace be upon you.
بل